Sounding good? Okay. Hi there, I'm Veronica Wilson. This is my audience. Alright, I'm going to be doing a persuasive speech today about video games not causing real-life violence. Alright, so, have you ever thought that people who play video games were more violent than the average Joe? Well, today I'm going to use evidence to persuade you that video games do not cause a rise in real-life violence. So, here's a little bit about the argument for video games do cause violence. As you've probably seen on a lot of blog posts, politician speeches, different psychology reviews, that video games do cause a rise in real-life violence, and they've been blamed for a lot of the mass shootings that have been happening recently. Well, one such doctor, who is a psychologist, her name is Dr. Jean Twenge, stated in an article that she wrote that that video games did cause real-life violence, and it was proven by 2 studies that were done that she found. She also stated that people who played video games regularly were 3 times as likely to be more aggressive than somebody who doesn't. However, I looked up all the information for the 2 studies that she had shown in her article. She had never sourced them. I could never find them, so I'm not sure if she made them up or not. But if you look up if video games do cause real-life violence, pretty much everything you're going to see is about how they don't. So I'm going to show you 3 different studies that prove that video games do not cause real-life violence. But first, a question. Do you feel that Candy Crush or Battlefield makes you want to hurt people, animals, or things more than normal? Well, here's a first study. It's got a really long title, but I shortened it to Rhetoric versus Data. So this study was done by 3 people in 2015. Their names were Markey, and French. And they found in their study that video games do not cause real-life violence to rise, and in fact found the opposite to be true in their study. That it actually caused less aggressive behavior in people. And they actually said in their study that a lot of researchers have been using kind of a correlation between statistics of which groups have the highest rate of violence and the groups which have the highest rate of playing video games. And they cautioned against it. Another question for you guys is, how do you feel normally when playing video games? Do you think that other people would call you more aggressive than others? Alright, now this is an article by CNBC. It is comparing different countries between their violent gun death rates and the rates of video game revenue. And as you can see, while a lot of people have very high video game revenue, a lot of them have very low violent gun deaths, except for the US, which is an outlier. Whoops. So, I found that very surprising, because if video games do cause a lot of real-life violence, a lot of, people who play shooter games, and you think that the violent gun deaths would be higher if it did, and it obviously doesn't. Okay, so did these statistics from these countries surprise you? And which countries were the most surprising? And then there's one final study that I looked at. It's a study on adolescent aggressive behaviors. It was done by Andrew Przybylski and Netta Weinstein in the United Kingdom. I believe they did it in Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and Britain. They surveyed parents of children and teens as well as teens through online surveys. I believe they said they had 1,004 teens, half and half. Some of them were, of course, of other gender. And they did 2 different surveys. They did a personality survey, and then they did a video game behavior survey. And a lot of the parents actually said that their observations of their teens was that they were actually less aggressive after having a session of playing video games. And that they were actually more social after playing video games. So instead of being antisocial and more aggressive, they actually found the opposite to be true. Alright. And then, do you think now that perhaps video games aren't the true cause of real-life violence such as mass shootings? I think that we definitely need to look at other aspects of society, especially in the U.S., and compare them to other countries which have lower gun death rates, and higher video game revenue, and maybe see what they're doing differently than us, besides video games. I hope that I've somewhat persuaded you guys to do your own research into video games and real-life violence, and how they're not correlated. And these are all my references here, and that is the end of my speech. Oh, you need to show you guys again. There's my audience again. And have a good night.